Ha ha ha, I want you to leave my house now. Arrogant mother-in-law, you are kicking me away my own house. You're going to let her get away with this? Beatrice's voice was sharp, her words slicing through the air like a blade. How long are you going to let her ruin your home, John? John shifted uncomfortably on the couch, his eyes flicking between his wife and his mother. He could feel the tension building, thick and heavy in the air, but he didn't know how to respond. Not today. Amina, his wife, stood in the kitchen, her back turned to them as she silently dried a dish. She had long since learned to keep her distance from these confrontations, to let them play out without interfering. But Beatrice wasn't giving her a chance. Not today. Why does she insist on pretending that she's in charge here? Beatrice muttered, her eyes never leaving Amina's back. This place is a mess, and she doesn't even care. This was yet one out of the days Beatrice made life unbearable for Amina. Beatrice had once moved into their matrimonial room, saying she wanted to spend time with her son. She had poured away a pot of soup, claiming it wasn't good enough. She had rewashed her son's clothes Amina hand outside, saying she didn't do it well. It was just from one argument to another, Amina had long lost her peace, just managing the criticism and feeling less of herself. Amina's fingers tightened around the dish towel. It was as if Beatrice had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The insults had been subtle until now, but today, they were bold, deliberate. John's mother was pushing her limits, trying to force Amina into a corner she had no intention of staying in. You've been too quiet, Beatrice continued, her voice thick with disdain. Too passive. Maybe that's your problem, Amina. Maybe if you weren't so weak, John wouldn't have to clean up after you all the time. Amina's breath hitched. She wanted to respond, wanted to shout back, but she swallowed the words. Patience. That's what she'd always told herself. But today, something inside her was changing. She was tired of being the silent wife, the one who took it all and said nothing. John knew better than to speak, but his silence cut just as deeply. He had seen these fights before, knew how his mother could manipulate the situation, make Amina feel small, unseen. He was stuck, caught between two women he loved, each one pulling him in a different direction. But Amina wasn't the same woman she had been when they first married. She had grown, and with that growth came strength. A quiet strength. Today, she would not remain silent. Today, she would make her voice heard. Turning slowly, Amina met Beatrice's gaze, her eyes calm but firm. I'm not the problem here, she said softly, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her chest. Beatrice's lips curled into a smirk, her eyes narrowing as she assessed Amina. It was a familiar look, one that told Amina that her mother-in-law wasn't used to being challenged. But this time, Amina wasn't backing down. Oh, I see, Beatrice said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. So now you think you can talk back? Tell me, Amina, what exactly are you contributing to this house? What do you bring to the table besides complaints? Amina's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel her patience slipping, but she knew better than to let Beatrice see her anger. Instead, she remained calm, her hands folding neatly in front of her. I take care of this house, Amina said quietly, her words measured. I make sure everything runs smoothly. I manage the bills, the meals, the cleaning. I work just as hard as anyone else here. Beatrice let out a bitter laugh, her voice rising with each word. Manage the bills. Manage the meals. You really think you're some kind of housewife expert? John's always had to step in and clean up after you, and yet you keep pretending like you're doing a great job. I'm not blind, Amina. I see everything. Amina's fingers clenched at her sides, but she kept her composure. John had heard enough. He looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom, that's enough, John said, his voice tinged with frustration. Beatrice ignored him, her eyes still locked on Amina. You're always so passive, so weak. I don't understand why John puts up with you. He deserves better than this. Amina felt the sting of those words, but she refused to let them break her. She had been married to John for 2 years, and when they first married, they had agreed on a plan. They would focus on their careers, build their home, and in the 3rd year of their marriage, they would start a family. It was a mutual decision, something they both wanted, something they believed would solidify their bond. But now, Beatrice's words were aimed at tearing apart the very foundation of their relationship. Amina had known from the beginning that Beatrice didn't approve of her. It wasn't just because of the differences in their lifestyles or personalities. It was deeper. Beatrice had always been vocal about Amina's tribal background. Amina was from a different tribe than John, and for Beatrice, that was an insurmountable barrier. She had always made it clear that she never believed someone from Amina's tribe could truly understand their ways, their culture. Beatrice had raised John to believe that only someone from their tribe would be fit to marry him, someone who could align with their customs and values. But Amina had come to realize that her tribe was just an excuse. Beatrice didn't want to accept her because, in her eyes, Amina wasn't good enough. The constant undermining had worn Amina down, but she had stayed patient, stayed quiet, thinking that over time things would get better. But now, as Beatrice tore into her, Amina could feel all the years of tension bubbling to the surface. She had had enough. "I think it's time for you to leave, Amina," Beatrice said, her words final, cold. "You're not welcome here anymore. I've had enough of your excuses, and I'm tired of watching you fail." Amina's breath caught in her throat. It was as though the ground had been ripped from beneath her. She had never expected this, never thought Beatrice would go this far. And yet, here they were. John's face went pale, his hands gripping the sides of the chair as if he were trying to hold onto something, anything, to prevent the words from sinking in. "Mom, don't." "No, John," Beatrice interrupted, her voice unwavering. "This is for the best. She needs to learn that she can't keep running this house like she does. I'm doing you a favor. You'll see it soon enough." Amina's eyes flicked to John, searching his face for some sign, some flicker of understanding. But there was nothing. He remained silent, his gaze downcast, as if caught between two forces too powerful for him to break free from. Amina's heart shattered as she realized that, in that moment, she had no one. Not even a husband. Nothing she ever did appeared like she had done it well, and John had let her mother move into the house with them, always looking for faults in his wife. Amina couldn't believe it. She stood there, holding back tears, as Beatrice's words echoed in her mind. She had always known that her mother-in-law disapproved of her, but this was too much. John was completely silent. Amina had always told herself that, no matter what, she could count on John to stand by her. But now, he was just there. He wasn't fighting for her, wasn't defending her. He wasn't even speaking. "John, please," Amina whispered, her voice breaking. "Say something." John remained silent. His mother's voice rang in his ears, and for a moment, he didn't know where he stood. Beatrice had been in his life long before Amina, and the bond between mother and son ran deep. He couldn't deny that part of him still felt like a child when it came to his mother, but that didn't excuse his silence. It didn't excuse how he let Beatrice push Amina to this breaking point. Amina's hands trembled as she turned and walked toward the door. It was the last thing she ever wanted to do, but at this moment, she saw no other choice. She had to leave. The woman she loved, the man she had given her heart to, had abandoned her when she needed him most. The house, the family, the dream of starting a family, it all seemed like a distant memory. Just as she reached for the door, Beatrice spoke again, her tone dripping with victory. "That's right. Leave. Go back to your own people, where you belong. I'm tired of pretending you belong here." Amina froze, the pain of those words like a knife in her chest. She stood there for a moment, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. But then, something inside her snapped. She wasn't going to let Beatrice win. She wasn't going to let her take everything away from her. Amina turned back, her eyes flashing with a new fire. "You're wrong, Beatrice," she said, her voice steady and full of resolve. "You don't know everything. You think you've won, but you haven't. I'm not leaving because of you. I have something that you don't know." John's gaze flicked between Amina and Beatrice, his confusion clear, but Amina didn't wait for him to say anything. Instead, she went inside their room, opening a drawer. She pulled out a set of documents, walked back in and placed them on the table in the sitting room. "I own this house," Amina said, her voice calm but firm. The words hit like a bombshell. Beatrice's eyes widened, and for the first time in their exchange, she was speechless. The room fell silent, the weight of Amina's words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Beatrice stood frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief. John, too, seemed paralyzed, his eyes darting between his wife and his mother. The tension in the room was so thick, you could almost hear it suffocating the space. What did you say?" Beatrice stammered, her voice thick with confusion. "You own this house." Amina nodded slowly, her face a mixture of pride and sadness. She had always known this moment would come, but she hadn't expected it to be under these circumstances. She had kept the truth from John, thinking it was best for their relationship. But now, with everything that had happened, it seemed necessary to reveal it. "Yes," Amina replied, her voice steady. "This house is mine. I bought it years ago, long before I met you, John. My parents left me the money, and I used it to purchase this property. It's in my name." John's expression shifted from confusion to shock. His gaze turned toward Beatrice, as if searching for an explanation for the truth Amina had just dropped like a bomb. Beatrice's face turned pale, her lips trembling as the reality of the situation began to sink in. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, as if struggling to process the information. "I don't believe this," Beatrice muttered under her breath, her voice strained. "You've been living in my son's house, and you're telling me it's yours. How could you not tell me this sooner?" Amina took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure as her emotions threatened to boil over. "I didn't think it mattered, Beatrice. I didn't want to make a point of it. But you've pushed me to the edge. You've treated me like an outsider in my own home, like I'm beneath you. You've tried to drive me away for the longest time, all because of something I can't change, my background, my tribe. But it's not your place to decide what my marriage should be." Amina's words were like a slap in the face to Beatrice, who stood there, too stunned to respond immediately. John, however, looked as though the ground had been pulled from under him. His eyes flickered between the documents on the table and his mother's stunned expression. His mind raced as he tried to comprehend what he was hearing. "Amina," John began, his voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me?" "I had no idea." Amina's eyes softened for a brief moment. "I didn't want you to feel like I was trying to control things. I wanted us to build our life together, as partners. But it's clear to me now that there was no partnership here. You stood by while your mother tore me down, time and time again. And now, you see the truth." Beatrice stepped forward, her voice rising with frustration. "John, do you hear this? She's been lying to us the entire time. You're letting her control everything. She has the upper hand, and you." "I haven't been controlling anything," Amina interjected, her voice firm. "I never asked for any of this. I never asked for your approval, Beatrice. I've been trying to live peacefully with you, trying to be a good wife. But you made it impossible." John remained silent for a long moment, his face pale as he processed the whirlwind of emotions surrounding him. Beatrice was right in one sense. Amina had never told him about the house, and he was struggling with the revelation. But deep down, he knew that the real issue wasn't about property or finances, it was about respect, about trust, about the way Beatrice had manipulated him and his marriage from the start. "Mom, this has to stop," John said, his voice more assertive now. "You can't keep treating Amina like this. She's my wife, and you've crossed the line. I've let you do this for too long." Beatrice's face twisted in anger, her eyes narrowing. "John, don't you dare side with her. She's been plotting this all along. She doesn't belong here, and now she's just using her money to make us look like fools." John's face reddened with frustration. "You don't get it, Mom. It's not about the house. It's about how you've treated her, how you've tried to control everything in my life. You've pushed her to the edge, and now you've crossed the line. I can't just ignore that anymore." Amina stood quietly, watching the exchange unfold before her. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She had known this day would come, the day when John would have to choose. But even as her heart ached, she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. For the first time, John was speaking up. For the first time, he was standing up for her. But as the reality of the situation settled in, a thought lingered in Amina's mind. She had been patient for so long. She had given him every chance to stand by her, to defend their marriage, but he hadn't. It wasn't until she revealed the truth about the house that John finally found his voice. Amina looked at him, her eyes hardening slightly as she spoke. "John, why is it that it took the house for you to finally speak up?" Her voice was calm but laced with an underlying frustration. "Why did it take me revealing that I own this house for you to see the truth? For you to stand up for me?" John's face fell as the weight of her words sank in. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I've been here, trying to make this marriage work," Amina continued, her voice growing stronger. "I've been trying to build a life with you, and all this time, I felt like I was nothing in your eyes. Your mother has been tearing me down, and you just stood there." Her heart raced, the anger she had been holding back now rising to the surface. "You know, John, I could have told you everything from the beginning. But I kept it to myself because I thought it was for the best. I didn't want to control you. I didn't want you to feel like I was hiding something from you. But now I realize I've been holding on to this for the wrong reasons." John opened his mouth to apologize, but Amina raised her hand, stopping him. "No, John. I'm done waiting. I can't keep living like this. I'm not your second choice. I'm not your backup plan. If you're not going to stand up for me, if you're going to keep letting your mom control everything, then maybe it's time for me to go." John's eyes widened in panic. "Amina, no. I'm not letting you go. I don't want this to end like this." His voice faltered as he reached out to her. But Amina stepped back, shaking her head. "You need to make a decision, John. You need to decide if you're going to keep letting her tear us apart, or if you're going to stand with me." The silence that followed was deafening. John stood frozen, unable to find the words that would make everything right. Amina turned and began to gather her things, the realization that she had been silently waiting for something that may never come settling in. "I'm giving you a month," Amina said, her voice cold and final. "I'm leaving. Once the rent is due, in 1 month I do not want a renewal of the rent, you and your mom will have to evacuate. I've been more than patient. I've been more than understanding. But I can't live in a place where I'm constantly fighting for respect." John stood motionless, his heart heavy with guilt and regret. He wanted to say something, anything, but he couldn't. The truth was too much to bear. Amina didn't look back as she packed the last of her things into her suitcase. She had made her decision, and now there was no turning back. The weight of everything that had happened between them, her patience, her sacrifices, her love for him, hung in the air, and she was done carrying it alone. Beatrice's voice broke the silence as she stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "You're really going through with this, Amina? You're leaving?" Amina paused for a moment, turning to face Beatrice, her eyes steady and unyielding. "I'm not leaving because of you. I'm leaving because John has never truly chosen me. I've been living in a house that isn't mine, in a marriage that hasn't been a partnership. I can't do this anymore." John looked at his mother, then at Amina, torn between his love for both of them. But Amina had made her decision. She wasn't going to stay in a situation that left her constantly fighting for her place, for her dignity. And she wasn't going to let John's indecision cost her any more of herself. Amina took a deep breath, her hand on the door handle. "You'll have a month to make arrangements. I won't wait any longer." She walked into their bedroom picking up her things. She was leaving for good. She stepped out the door, leaving John, who couldn't beg her to stay back, and his mother to process everything. The silence that followed her departure was deafening, a sign of the unraveling threads of a family torn apart by lies, manipulation, and unresolved conflict. A few days later, Beatrice finally began packing her things. She had spent the past few days sulking, nursing her wounded pride, and contemplating what had gone wrong. She had always been the one in control of John, of his life, of his marriage. But now, Amina had broken free, and John had, for the first time, stood up to her. Her sense of superiority was slipping through her fingers, and she was left with no choice but to return to her husband's house, where she could regain the sense of power she once held. As she packed the last of her belongings into her suitcase, a sense of bitterness washed over her. She had lost the battle for her son's life, but in her mind, she wasn't ready to accept defeat. She could already hear the whispers in her head, "You've done the right thing. Amina doesn't belong here. She'll never be good enough for your son. You'll get him back. He'll come around." Beatrice closed her suitcase with a snap and walked toward the front door, her eyes searching for John, her son, but he was nowhere to be found. He had retreated to his room, his mind full of confusion and anger. John had never been angry with his mother before, not like this. But now, the frustration that had built up over the years finally exploded. He had seen the damage Beatrice had done to his marriage, and for the first time, he was furious with her. Furious with how she had controlled his every decision, manipulated him into making choices that didn't align with his own happiness. John stormed into the living room, his eyes blazing with anger. "Mom, I can't believe this. You've completely ruined everything. You've torn apart my marriage, and now you're just going to walk away like nothing happened." Beatrice turned to face him, her expression cold and unapologetic. "I've done what needed to be done. I tried to protect you, John. You're my son. And that woman, Amina, she's not fit to be your wife. She's always been a threat to you, to everything we've worked for." John's anger flared, his fist clenched at his sides. "You've worked for what, Mom? To control me? To keep me from living my life the way I want? You've pushed me to the edge, and now I'm stuck picking up the pieces of a broken marriage. This is on you?" Beatrice's face twisted with a mix of disbelief and defensiveness. "You don't understand, John. I did this because I care about you. I always have. And now, because of her, your life is falling apart. You'll see, one day. You'll come crawling back to me." John shook his head, his voice cutting with finality. "No, Mom. You're the one who's made me lose everything. You've caused so much damage that I don't know if I can ever fix it. I need space, and I need you to leave. You've done enough." Beatrice stood in silence for a moment, a hurt expression crossing her face. She wasn't used to being spoken to like this, but she didn't want to admit that she was wrong. Instead, she just picked up her suitcase and headed for the door without another word. "Goodbye, John," Beatrice muttered, her voice tinged with bitterness. "You'll regret this, just like you've regretted everything else I've warned you about." John stood there, watching his mother walk out of the door, a mix of anger and guilt churning inside him. As the door clicked shut behind her, he let out a long, exasperated breath. The house, once filled with tension and resentment, now felt unbearably empty. Meanwhile, Amina had made her way to her brother's house. She had spent the last few days processing everything, trying to find peace amidst the chaos. She had always been close to her older brother, and when things had reached a boiling point with John and Beatrice, she knew it was time to seek refuge in the one place where she felt understood, her brother's home. Her brother, Ahmed, had welcomed her with open arms, his calm and reassuring presence a balm to her battered heart. He knew all about the struggles Amina had faced in her marriage, and he had always been supportive. Though he was concerned for his sister, he knew that Amina's strength would help her overcome the pain she was facing. "It's going to be okay, Amina," Ahmed said as they sat together on the couch, sipping tea. "You've been through so much, but you're stronger than this. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to live a life where you're respected." Amina smiled weakly, grateful for his comforting words. "I thought I could make it work with John. I really did, but I just couldn't keep fighting for a marriage where I was invisible. Where I was constantly being controlled." Ahmed nodded, understanding the depth of her pain. "You didn't deserve any of that, Amina. No one should ever make you feel like you're not enough." Amina looked down at her hands, the weight of the past few days settling heavily in her chest. "I just don't know what to do now. I've given everything to him, to this marriage. I thought if I was patient, things would change. But now, I don't know who I am anymore. Ahmed gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You're Amina. You're my sister. You've always been strong, even when you didn't think you were, and I'll be here for you, no matter what. As Amina sat in her brother's home, she began to feel the first sense of relief since leaving her house. It wasn't the peace she'd hoped for, but it was a start, a chance to heal, to rediscover herself, and to rebuild her life. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. A few days after Beatrice had left, John found himself in a state of unbearable turmoil. His house felt emptier than ever, the silence so loud that it echoed in his ears. The guilt weighed heavily on his chest, and he knew, with every fiber of his being, that he had made a grave mistake. The reality was sinking in. Amina was gone. He had lost her. And for the first time, John truly understood the magnitude of the damage he had done. He couldn't bear it any longer. He needed to see her, to apologize, to make things right. Without a second thought, he drove to her brother's house, determined to beg for her forgiveness. When Amina opened the door, she didn't look surprised to see him. Her eyes were calm, almost detached, and that's when John realized how much distance had grown between them. Amina, please, John pleaded, his voice breaking. I am sorry. I know I messed up. I should have stood up for you. I should have put you first, but I let my mom control me. I was weak, and I let you down. Amina remained silent for a long moment, her eyes soft yet firm. She had heard the words before, too many times. But this time, they didn't hold the same weight. I can't do this, John, Amina said quietly. I can't just forget everything. You let your mother tear us apart. You didn't stand up for me when it mattered. I'm not just going to jump back into a relationship where I'm not respected. John's face crumpled, the weight of her words crashing into him. He reached out, but Amina stepped back. Please, Amina. I can't live like this. I need you. I'm nothing without you. But Amina shook her head. You need to learn, John. You need to feel what it's like to live without me before you truly understand what you've lost. I'm not coming back until I know you've changed. You need to prove that you can stand up for me, for us. John's heart shattered, but he knew deep down that she was right. Amina was a force he had taken for granted, and now that she was gone, he realized just how much of a void she left in his life. In desperation, John made a decision. He left her brother's house and drove to his mother's house. He needed help. He needed someone to intervene, to convince Amina to give him another chance. It had been 3 weeks since Amina left, and John was unraveling. Every corner of the house echoed with her absence, her laughter, her careful tidiness, her meals that made the place feel like home. Now, the house was cold and quiet. John had never realized just how much of a presence Amina had been until she was gone. He tried calling, texting. Nothing got through. Amina needed space, and she meant it. The one thing he used to take for granted, her quiet support, was now the thing he missed most. Days passed, and John found himself slipping deeper into guilt and regret. One evening, after coming home to an empty house, he broke down. He drove to his mother's place late at night, his eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. Beatrice opened the door and froze at the sight of him. Mom, I need your help, John said, voice hoarse. If you don't come with me to talk to Amina, I swear I'll lose it. I'll lose her. And if I lose her, I don't want to leave. Beatrice's breath caught in her throat. For all her pride, for all her certainty that she had done the right thing, nothing could have prepared her for this. She saw the desperation in her son's eyes, real, raw, broken. And for the first time, she felt the depth of what her interference had cost him. Okay, she said quietly. I'll go with you. But you do the talking. I'll just make it clear I'm not here to fight. Together, they went to Amina's brother's house. Amina was surprised to see them at the gate, especially her mother-in-law, standing beside John with remorse written all over her face. John fell to his knees the moment Amina stepped out. I'm sorry, Amina, he whispered. I failed you. I didn't see you for who you are until you left. I should have protected you, defended you. Please give me another chance. Amina didn't speak right away. She looked over at Beatrice, who stepped forward slowly, her hands nervously clenched. Amina, she began, voice low, I was wrong. I was blind, and I let my pride ruin something beautiful. I won't make excuses. I just want to ask if you'll allow me. I'll never show up uninvited again. I'll stay in my place. You and John can build your home in peace. I promise. Amina's gaze softened, but her expression stayed firm. I appreciate the apology, Mom. I really do. But I'm not coming back now. Not yet. I need you both to understand something. I was never the weak one. You just never saw how strong I was. John nodded slowly, tears threatening to spill. I see it now, Amina, and I keep proving it to you, every day. The days passed, and true to his word, John didn't stop trying. He called, checked in, sent her notes, and made sure to continue depositing money into the account Amina had used to collect rent, the same account she had been secretly saving for their future. He didn't ask what she was doing with the money. He didn't ask when she'd come back. He only wrote in the transaction note, keep saving. For us. For whatever you dream. It was a small act, but it said everything. He had seen how powerful, resourceful, and visionary his wife was, and he wanted to be part of that vision, not control it. Then one day, John returned home from work. He unlocked the front door, expecting the usual cold, silent welcome. But something was different. The living room was clean. The cushions fluffed. The scent of stew simmering on the stove drifted through the air. He stepped in, stunned. Shoes placed neatly by the door. Her favorite throw draped across the sofa. The kitchen light on. And then, Amina. She was in the kitchen, quietly stirring a pot, her back to him like nothing had happened. John dropped his bag, emotion crashing over him like a wave. Amina, he breathed, stepping forward, stunned. She turned to him with a soft smile, and before he could speak again, he dropped to his knees once more. Please, he whispered, voice trembling. Please give me another chance. I've learned. I've changed. Just come back to me. Amina reached down, gently pulling him to his feet. You don't have to beg anymore, John. You already did the hardest part, you saw me. Truly saw me. He wrapped his arms around her tightly, burying his face in her shoulder as the tears came freely. They stood like that for a while, just holding one another in the middle of the kitchen that now smelled like home again. No more silence. No more battles. Just the beginning of something new. The end.